Oh, is it like live? We're live. Hey. Hey guys, welcome to episode 26. Oh, actually, episode 27. I am so sorry. Episode 27 of For the Record podcast. I'm your host where we For the Record podcast where we have the deep, therapeutic, uncomfortable, vulnerable, heavy, authentic, and necessary conversations. As you guys all know, I am Dom Fowler. I'm an educator. I am the owner and creator of August Jones Essentials, where we offer wellness shots and detoxes. I'm a mother, and I'm the host of this here podcast. When we're on episode 27, like, wow, crazy. Today we're having one of the most important conversations that we've had thus far.
Oh God.
And we're going to talk about disciplining children. And I have one of my good girlfriends here, and I'm going to pass it over to her and let her explain who she is and what she does. But she's been here before. You guys have seen her. But this was a very important conversation to me. Of course, you guys know I'm a mom of a little boy and trying to figure out what discipline looks like with that. And then I'm also a teacher to young children. I'm an elementary school teacher. So this is just very important to me, understanding how to discipline. We'll get into a little bit to like my background and how I was disciplined growing up and like what it should look like moving forward and how I should like be disciplining my child. Yeah, and I just can't wait to like learn and grow from this episode today. So let me pass it over to my good girlfriend, Tiffany.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Tiff.
Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for coming back.
Super happy to be here.
Yes.
So my name is Tiffany. I have a bachelor's in psychology, and my master's is in applied behavior analysis. Mm-hmm. And I currently practice as a board certified behavior analyst, a BCBA. Mm-hmm.
So can we get the boss drop? Thank you. Super fire.
So just to be clear, anything that I talk about today is not to be taken as any official clinical advice. Mm-hmm. I'm here having a conversation with my girlfriend. We're both parents. I'm also a mom of a 12-year-old boy. Mm-hmm. And I also work in a school district setting as a behavior specialist. So, yeah, I'm super excited to chat about this today. It is a very important conversation. Like I said, there's no manual to this parenthood stuff. So we all kind of are learning as we go.
Yeah.
And I'm super fortunate to have the schooling background that I have, and I'm able to apply it to what I do as a parent. So
yeah. No, I love that. And yes, take that disclaimer, like take it seriously because like she's not sitting here telling you how to discipline your child. We're just having a conversation around this with someone who has studied it, you know, and just has a good understanding of it. I want to ask Tiff how she was disciplined as a child, but before I do, I want to get into how I was disciplined as a child. Okay. Tiff really kind of already knows this, kind of, but like I talk about it here all the time too. Like as a child, I was disciplined by my father, not by my mother. My parents co-parented, so they weren't together since I was like 4, but they both raised us like separately. And my mom really didn't discipline us at all, but my dad did, and my dad beat us with a belt. And that's how I was disciplined as a child. I was beat with a belt. And also not only that, but there was also like a lot of like verbal abuse, like what I would consider verbal abuse. Like yelling, like tormenting, like things like that. But all in the nature of like just trying to make us do the right thing. Like it wasn't like he was like saying mean things to me or stuff, things like that. He was yelling like, don't do this because this. You know what I mean? Right. Like there was intention behind what he was doing, and he did it because that's what he knew to do.
Yeah.
You know, like he was not doing it with ill intention at all. Like, and I know that. Like, my dad would, like, beat us and then sit us down and lecture us for 3 hours and cry about the fact that he had to beat us. And he's like, I didn't want to have to beat y'all, but yada, 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 like, whatever. Like, you know, and he's explaining to us, like, why he beat us and why he wants us to do this and why he wants us to do that. He was just trying to, like, keep control of his children.
Right.
Because he just wanted his children to have better than what he had.
Right.
And, like, as I grow, at the time I hated my dad. You know, like I'm like, oh, he's evil. Like, why is he doing this? Mm-hmm. And like, but as I've gotten older and I've looked back in retrospect, I'm like, well, like, I get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I get what he was doing, and I don't think I'm not going to do it, right? Because what I think happened, I say this all the time. Like, I think there were a lot of good things that my dad instilled in me, and I think discipline is one of them. And I think that just even now at 32 years old, I go and do things and I think of my dad's voice in the back of my head saying I shouldn't do it, you know? And he's always was telling me the right thing to do. And I always say, like, if I listened to everything my dad told me to do, I would be exactly where I wanted to be in life. Like, it was always with good intention. He just wanted the best for his kids, and that was the only way he knew how to try to do it, right? But I didn't listen to all those things, and, you know, it caused me to be sneaky in a lot of ways where it was like, just don't let them find out about it. And one thing I noticed in myself and all of my siblings is that we are very angry people.
Yeah.
Very angry, very like quick-tempered, where it's like anything can like get on our nerves or like make us irritated, or like I can be mean, like I can be angry, I can be a bully in ways, you know, like, and I know that about myself and self-awareness, and I think that comes from me being beat, like, and on top of that, like, now I've grown out of it, but there was a time in my life where like that anger caused me to want to be physical, you know, like soon as I got upset with someone, I wanted to put my hands on them, and it's like, that's not a thing. Like, you can't do that actually as like an adult, you know. But
that's
like,
so funny that you said that, because I work in a school.
Yeah.
And, I had got a behavior call one time for this girl.
Yeah.
And I get there, and they explained to me what happened. And this little girl was like, she goes, I told this girl 3 times to play with me, and she didn't, so I hit her. And I'm like, oh my God, her mom at home is probably like, I told you 3 times to put this away, and you didn't. So like, that's what she's used to at home. Like, you know, my mom gave me 3 warnings. At the 3rd warning, I get popped.
Right.
I told this girl 3 times that I wanted her to play with me. I got to pop her now. Like, that's just what. So, you know, kids are internalizing these things in a way that parents aren't expecting.
Yes.
And then you're getting phone calls home, and you're saying, well, I don't see these problems at home. And I'm like, well,
they don't even understand.
Exactly.
Because it is a huge, like, mindset shift, right? From, like, thinking, like, oh, I need to beat my child for them to behave.
Yeah, because kids literally think, like, this is how my parents control me, and then this is how I control other people.
This is how I'm going to control other people.
Yeah.
And they don't even understand that. And it's huge.
It's huge.
And I feel like not only are me and my siblings angered easily, but we also have, all 3 of us have been in like domestic violent relationships.
Yeah.
Because of the same thing. Like, you know, where it's like we get angry at something and we think, let me put my hands on someone. And it's just like, no, you know, you have to unlearn that really quickly. Like, it's actually not okay for you to get angry and put your hands on someone. Like, you know, and like,
I think it also shows too that like it teaches people that someone can love you and still disrespect your body in a physical way. Yeah. And that's confusing. That's very conflicting.
Oh, yeah, that's deep.
Yeah. So I think that people have to understand the foundation that they may be laying for their kids.
Yeah.
And they use that as a form of punishment, because it really does manifest differently in other people.
Yeah.
Like some people, I'm sure you've seen kids where like they're raised by both the same parents and they grow up completely different.
Yeah.
Every kid is going to they're going to take it and use it in a different way.
Right.
So it's important to pay attention to that. But it's just, I don't know. Like growing up, I think I remember getting like 3 beatings my entire life.
Okay.
My whole life.
What did you do to get them beat? I'm just curious.
To be honest with you, one of them I was significantly young. I think my brother did something, and my mom thought it was me.
Oh.
She didn't believe me, and like I remember being in the tub. I got beat when I got out the tub, so I was wet.
That is a thing. That I don't want to even put that on our culture, but that's a thing.
Yeah, it's
that
a
happens.
Thing, and it's crazy.
It's pretty evil.
It's very crazy, but I cannot tell you exactly what or why what happened. I just remember that it wasn't my fault, and I got beat for nothing.
Yeah,
that was probably my worst beating of my life,
because it wasn't even something that you did wrong.
And I just remember the feeling of how that felt.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure it like made me really angry.
Yeah,
and then I remember another time where I got backslapped. I remember I called my mom a liar, and she like backslapped me while we were in the car.
Oh, wow.
I'll never forget that. And then there was another time where like me and my cousins did something, and we all got lined up and we all got beat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
by who?
I remember both our parents.
Oh,
it was
okay.
like my mom and my aunt were taking turns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
This is crazy.
I forget what we did, but they would leave us in the house.
Yeah.
And it was like 6 of us.
Yeah.
And like, of course we was going to cut up because it was 6 kids in the house, like with no parent supervision. So it's like, that's another thing. I think the expectations we have for kids are kind of crazy high sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, they, we did something. I mean, we might have broken something. I don't know, maybe broken a piece of furniture or something like that. And like
Yeah.
nobody admitted who did it. And so then we just all had to get beat for it.
Ooh.
It was one of those situations.
I wonder, like, all right, so I wanted to put this question in here, but I didn't. But I always wonder about the historical context of it.
Oh man, I mean, and I don't want to sit here and pretend like I know the facts, because I don't. But there is a lot of conversations around like the history of slavery,
because it sounds so
and people being beat, and things like that, and us bringing that into our culture and our household. So I don't know how true that is. It sounds right. Like on a basic level.
I would love to trace like our ancestry like back to West Africa and see if this is how they did, like how do they discipline their children in West Africa, you know what I mean? Because if this is how they're doing it in West Africa too, then okay,
then maybe not, like maybe this is what we brought over here to begin with,
right? You know what I mean? But it just, that sounds like some slavery, like, because I'm not gonna lie, my dad would do the same thing. My dad would be like, well, if one of y'all in trouble, all of y'all in trouble,
right?
And that's crazy.
Yeah, it is like, crazy, because it's like that has nothing to do with me.
It has I didn't do anything wrong.
I have no control over their actions.
Like, and even like my family members would like say stuff to my dad like, that's not okay. And my dad was like, don't tell me how to raise my kids. You know what I mean? Like, and he wouldn't be receptive to that at all. No. But like my sister would do something 4 years older than me, a way different age bracket, has boys in the house or something. That's I'm a little baby girl. Yeah. But my dad comes home and sees boys in the house. Now we both getting beaten.
That's crazy.
I'm a baby. Like, I have nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's wild. He's like letting you know what's gonna happen if you do it in a few years.
And I'm happy you said that, because that is one of the things I always said. Like, all of my girlfriends like lost their virginities before me, and like a lot of them had babies before me. Oh God. And like they did things before I did them. And all of them always talked about the fear of my dad and me. That was the reason why I didn't do things. You know what I mean? Like, because I was so afraid of my dad, I did not do certain things. And those were the things he did not want me to do. You know what I mean? And so, like, sometimes I'm like, what would I have been like if I didn't have that fear of my dad? You know what I mean? But, like, I don't know if that, is that healthy? Is it not? Like, you know?
I mean, I think I don't know, because I'm someone that believes that everybody's life turns out the way
it's supposed to
be in general.
Yeah.
But I don't know, you probably would be a lot less angry.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't have to, you know, the therapy bill might be a little bit lighter.
Yeah, because everyone knows.
Like things like that. Like, you know, it's so. But, like, who knows? Like you said, who knows, you know, what it would have been like. But it's opposite for me, because my dad didn't discipline me physically at all.
Oh, wow.
At all.
Okay.
I had an older brother. Like, he would pop my brother upside the head. But, like, when it came to me, like, I got away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
From my dad. Like, I remember, oh, man, I remember just being so disrespectful to my dad, because I had no fear.
Of him.
I had no fear whatsoever. I would tell him to shut up.
Yeah.
You know, I would throw things. Like, if he yelled at me, I'd be like, I don't care. Like, I'm leaving. I would run away. Like, things like that, because I knew that he wasn't going to really do anything.
I think that's also something. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
Because, like, my dad, he disciplined all of us. And me the least, actually, because I was the youngest. So once my siblings were out the house, he was like, all right, I'm tired of this. Like, you know, and he just, like, I probably got the least amount of beatings. But, like, my dad wasn't actually biologically my father, and I didn't know that growing up, but like I felt a disconnect, and I was always fighting for his love, you know?
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so like my siblings, even though my dad would beat them, like they still would try him. They would test him, not me. Like if my dad said get straight A's this semester, I came home with straight A's. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like I was always fighting to have my dad's like love and approval, and like that created like a whole different person in me, where it was, and my siblings to this day, like they do things my dad doesn't want them to do all the time, regardless of the beatings, you know? So I'm thinking maybe it wasn't the beatings that actually helped. It was me fighting for his love is why I did things that he wanted us to do, opposed to like my siblings just being like, I'll do what I want to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's hard to understand whether it was the beatings or like what it was. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but like I didn't receive any discipline from my mom. So any discipline I'd have received was from my dad. Yeah. Yeah.
And I can say though, just like I said, I wasn't beat a lot growing up. But I was angry towards my mom. And it really, I found myself more angry because my brother got in a lot of trouble. Like he would get beatings a lot. So I was angry more so because of how.
For your brother.
Like just even watching that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, people don't understand, like, if you're beating your kid their entire childhood, at some point you have to realize it's not effective.
Yeah, because they're still doing things
so
wrong.
What are you doing that for? Like,
You're right.
if it's not actually effective and it's not working and there's no real behavior change.
Yeah. That's a fact. And they're not only traumatizing them, but you're traumatizing their siblings. Because what you just said makes, my brother got caught stealing before. I never forget this. And my dad beat him. And it was so bad. Me and my sister were in the other room listening to it. And listening to my brother scream like that, I couldn't take it. Yeah. We were playing like a piano and stuff, trying to like tune it out because we didn't want to hear it that happening to our brother. You know what I mean? Like him. Ooh, I still can think about it right now.
Yeah,
and get,
it's crazy.
Like it was traumatizing for me to hear my brother be beat.
And then you build your parenthood off of fear. Yeah. So it's just like, I remember this too. Like when my brother got to a certain age where he got big enough. Yeah. He would just leave, or he would just like take whatever my mom had in her hand out of her hand, because at that point they built their relationship off of fear. Yeah. And it's just like, I'm bigger than you now. I'm not afraid. Yeah. So then what?
Exactly.
Like, so it's very important, like, to realize too, like, if you're continuously beating your kids, that's a relationship built out of fear, and eventually that child may not fear you anymore.
Right, because they'll be too.
But do they respect you?
Yeah.
Like, those are the things that you have to think about. And it got to a point where I think my brother was like, yeah, you can't hurt me.
And this is
so it just got real weird after that, because it was just like my mom was like, well, what? And then you get into, oh, well, I'm kicking you out because you don't listen, and things like that. So it's just, it gets crazy. So
and this is a thing for me, like especially, and I'm sure for you too. Like now that I'm co-parenting a young black man, right, and he's a boy. I know he's a boy. I know that he will not always. Even if I instill this fear in him, eventually, next year he's gonna be taller than me and bigger than me. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm at that point with my son where he's, I can feel his strength.
Exactly.
And I'm like, okay,
right. So what am I gonna do with this?
Right.
And it's just like, at the end of the day, it's like, what do I instill in him to make him listen to me? You know, and like trust my guidance. You know, and trust is a good. I'm happy I said that, because maybe trust is one of those things.
Trust is the biggest thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when it comes to raising your children and just kind of like instilling certain values in them, because I never forget, like I asked my son one time, I think something happened, and I told him I was going to do something, and I didn't follow through. And the next time I told him I was going to do something, and then he was like, well, I don't know, I have a feeling you're just not going to do it. Ooh. And I was shocked, because, like, in my opinion, like, why would you not trust me? And he was like, well, Mom, last time you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. And he was pretty young when this conversation happened. He was maybe like 6 or 7 years old. So he was pretty young. You didn't do it. And, like, from that moment on, I made it very clear, like, if I can't follow through on something, I was going to make sure that I explain why I couldn't do it. Right. Like, it was very important to me. Like, and people will tell you, like, when it comes to parenting, like, I got to go do this because I told Carter I was going to do it. Like, I have to follow through. Yes. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to just building a relationship, like, outside of discipline, just building a relationship with your kids, that they trust you. Yeah. Because you want them to come to you when they need stuff. You want them to come to you when they need support, when they need to talk and things like that. And I remember, like, even growing up, my mom would say, oh, you're not going to get in trouble. Just tell me. And then, like, I would tell her, and I would still get in trouble. So it's just like, why'd you lie? Yeah. Yo. Like, I don't trust you. So I think that's a super, super, super important. Just building the very baseline relationship with your child from a young age. Like, follow through. Whether it be like, I'm going to take something away, follow through. Because as soon as a child learns that your word does not matter, that relationship goes to shit. Yeah. And like you said, I think that's in relationships in general. Exactly. Like you have to just learn how to build trust within people in general. You have to. And I always say this, like, this comes, like, I'm the type of person who, like, a lot of my friends or just people around me feel comfortable coming to me and talking about, like, their deepest, darkest secrets. And I think it's really because I mean it when I say that I'm not judging you. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I am not judging you for it. This is one of the things I've taken from my mom that I actually, like, this is, like, the one thing I've taken from my mom that I actually, like, really, like, give to her, that she gave to me, is, like, you're not going to get in trouble when you come to me and talk to me about that thing. Right. And the reason being is because I want you to come to me and talk to me about every single thing. Yeah. So even if it makes me so upset,
you won't see it.
Mm-hmm.
You won't see it. You won't feel it because you got to come to me and talk to me about every single thing. I do not want you hiding things from me. Like, I just don't want you ever hiding things from me. Like, my mom was so good. Like I said, she didn't discipline us at all. She was so good at being our friend, which also didn't suffice, right? Like, you need to be a mother, like, at a certain point.
There's a balance.
There's
all of that.
Exactly. And she got lucky because my dad was so, like, disciplinary that she didn't have to be that at all. But she should have been. You know what I mean? Like, we just, like, there was nothing about her that scared me, or not even scared me. There was nothing about her that, like, made me feel like I couldn't come to her and be honest with her about everything. And, like, not even that. Even if she had something to say, I didn't care what she had to say.
Right.
Type of vibe. You know what I mean? Like, but she didn't have anything to say. She didn't judge me for anything. We just worked through it, you know? My dad later in life regretted so much that, like, we couldn't talk to him about anything. And he's like, why do you guys only talk to your mom? You don't tell me what's going on.
Same. It's like flip-flop for me, but same.
Yeah. And he hated it. And he just was like, you can't talk to me about things. Like, I hate that. And I just told myself, like, yes, I want to discipline my child, but I definitely want him to feel like he can come to me and talk to me about anything, you know? And I am lucky enough to have gotten that from my mom, where I really am not judging you. I've been through probably what you've been through 10 times over anyway. Right. You know what I mean?
I tell my son all the time, like, I've been there,
done that.
Yeah, I know that you're lying because I would have lied about that too.
Yeah.
Like,
made the mistake.
Yeah, like, I would have did the same thing, so I get it.
It's all good.
I've lied to my parents about boys. I know that you're lying about that girl.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. So, you know, I've been there, done that. And it's a very normal developmental thing to do, and, like, emotion to have. Like, I tell them all the time, like, how you're feeling and what you're doing is not anything other than, like, what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
It's very normal.
And that's so important because, like, once you get older, and I'm learning this about myself in therapy, is, like, I have a hard time making decisions because I don't grant myself grace to know that if that decision is bad, that it's not the end of the world. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a horrible person because I made a bad decision.
Right.
Like, and it's because my decision making was so, like, upheld. Like, if I did not make a good decision, like, I got my ass beat. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, as a child, I didn't have the room to make a poor decision. So, like, as an adult, I definitely.
And you know what's funny? And it's funny that you brought that up. Like, there's consequences in everything, right, in life. And I think that sometimes as parents, we need to realize that the consequence is sometimes natural.
Yeah.
You don't need to punish.
Yeah. Ooh.
Like, you get what I'm saying? Because, so, for example, my son broke his computer. He punched his computer screen. Very unlike him.
Yeah.
To, like, get that angry.
Yeah.
And punch his computer screen.
Yeah.
So, when he called me and he said, "Mom, my computer's not working." I was like, "Oh, really? Like, it's not working?" He's like, I'm like, "What's wrong with it?" He was like, "Well, I kind of broke it." And I'm like, I'm thinking he, like, dropped it. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, I punched it." And I was like, "Oh, did you really?" He was like, "Yeah, I punched it." I was like, "Seriously?" Because it was so unlike him.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah." And honestly, I was like, "Wow." I said, "Thank you for being honest about what happened." I said, "Well, I don't have any other words. You just don't have a computer anymore." Like, and that's the punishment.
That's how that works.
And like, that's enough, you know? Like, that was his literal favorite thing.
I love that.
Like, it was his favorite thing in the world. Like, he took it everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't need to do anything more because you're going to feel it.
Yes.
You might not feel it tomorrow.
Yes.
You might not feel it next week, but you're going to feel it.
You're going to, I love that.
So it's just like, natural consequences are the best ones.
Ooh.
Because you're going to naturally contact that throughout your life in general.
In general.
If you bully someone, if you're mean to a friend, if they're not going to want to be your friend anymore.
Yeah.
That's natural.
That's what
like,
how that looks like.
Natural consequences will come. And that's just what it is. I think that sometimes we over punish people for things.
Yeah.
And that's where you get guilt and shame
and all
and things like that because you've been over punished.
That I just had an epiphany. Like, that shifted my mindset on discipline. So, all right, so just so you guys know, this has been so beautiful. Tiff and I have just been we freestyling right now. We didn't even get into any other questions, but there's been a lot of gems dropped just in that. So that's beautiful. The first question is how do you define discipline? And what you just said was so profound though. Like the natural consequences of things is just crazy. Like
everything has a consequence, whether it be a good consequence or a bad one.
And that's the real thing that you want to teach to your children, because that's what will take, like, all throughout their life, they'll be being disciplined by the natural consequences of life.
And I think that as parents, we are so quick to feel like we have to do it for them.
Yeah.
And we don't.
Yeah.
Like, you know, my son's in 12th grade now. I mean, not 12th grade. I'm sorry. He's 12. He's in 6th grade now. So he's getting to a point where he has to study for his tests, and he has to plan, and he has to prepare and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he'll come home and be like, Mom, I have a test, you know, on this day. And I'm like, all right, well, like, you know, set aside time and make sure you get to study. And if you want help, I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
And like one day, you know, I had reminded him that he needed to study, and he was just like huffing and puffing. And I'm like, listen, I want you to think about how you feel when you sit down in front of an exam and you don't know the answers. And I want you to think about how you feel when you sit down in front of an exam and you know what you're doing. You're prepared. Which feeling is preferred? Which feeling is preferred?
Which feeling is preferred?
Yes. And he was like, well, you know, when I'm prepared. I'm like, so understand that's going to take extra work. Like, you know what it feels like already.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to push you to study when you know. So sometimes it's just reminding them of like, hey, this is the consequence of this.
Yeah.
This is the consequence of that.
Yeah.
You choose.
Yeah.
This is your life at the end of the day. Like, this is your life.
Right.
You know, so I think it's really important to kind of set that standard. Just reminding your child, like, you have a choice. In all situations, you have a choice. And there's a consequence that follows that. You know? And there are going to be kids that need the extra consequences from their parents.
Yeah.
You know? But some are just, a lot of kids are really maintained by natural consequences.
So for you, is that how you would define discipline? Like, is that what
So when it comes to discipline, so it's funny because I think in like my field, we define punishment or discipline only to its level of effectiveness.
Oh.
So like if it's not
changing anything,
it's not technically punishment.
Oh.
If it's not changing anything, you have not been disciplined. So, and you know how we define punishment, it's like, all right, well, did that thing stop the behavior from happening?
Yeah.
If it didn't, then no.
Yeah.
It wasn't effective.
Wow. Okay. So, okay, I like that. I like that a lot. What age do you think that discipline should start?
I would say as early as like 2 to 3 years old. It depends on what it is. Like, I think that you can start to build choices into your child's life as early as, you know, they can point to things.
Yeah.
So I would say like 2, 3 years
2,
old.
3 years
old. It just depends on. And like discipline doesn't have to come. It doesn't have to be this big, great thing. It's just like, hey, I told you to stop throwing that, and now I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that a lot of parents threaten a lot and don't ever follow through.
Don't ever do it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is something that I'm learning as a teacher, and I try to carry on as a mother too, because it's hard. Like, my son is my one and only, right? And the way that I was parented, it was like, I would say a lot of it was very negligent. And I just don't want to ever make my son feel like unloved or unwanted or uncared for. Just like, I'd never want him to feel like there's any negligence coming from me.
Well, I think that discipline can be rooted in love, though. Like, I think that you can enforce consequences if needed in love at the same time. I don't think that you need to yell or scream to get your point across. I think that you can still enforce those things without coming off as harsh and mean.
Oh.
And that was something I struggled with, especially when my son was younger. Like, you know, I was a yeller. I was a screamer.
Yeah.
My patience was very thin.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to realize, like, you know, a lot of times, because my son, he was a kid that, like, really just, he didn't want to disappoint me.
Yeah.
And I realized that, too. Like, you know, how I presented myself in the matter made a big difference in how he felt about himself, too. So I had to kind of realize, like, you know, I can discipline this kid without yelling, screaming, being harsh, being disrespectful. Like, and I'm not one to, like, I don't curse at my kid at all. Like, we don't really use curse words. I don't talk to him like that. I don't use demeaning language or anything like that. But I do yell and I do scream, or I have yelled and I have screamed. So even that, I had to realize, like, I can take away the iPad. I can take away the phone, and I don't have to yell to do it. You just take it away.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah, I do know, because it's hard, because, like, my son is at the age now where, like, I can't use curse words because that he'll just shut down. Like, even if I just curse in road rage on the road, he's like, don't say that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you said a bad word, mommy. Like,
yeah, they know.
You know what I mean? Like, at this point, he's not having any curse words type vibes. But I do notice that, like, I will yell. Like, I'll raise my voice. And I actually would say I raise my voice, and it'll be more stern with my son and my students. Like, and I wouldn't say it's yelling. I just would say it's, like, more of a stern.
Stern is fine.
Yeah, stern voice.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because I think that, like, adds clarity. Like, you are just being clear. Like, this is what I'm telling you to do, and there is no conversation around it.
Yes.
I think that's okay. I'm talking about yelling and screaming at the top of your lungs.
Yeah.
Like, I had to cut all that out, because I'm like same thing with the beating. It's not effective.
Same. I agree.
And that's more for us than anybody.
Yeah.
That's more us, like, getting our anger out than it is, like, you know, for the child to actually
understand what they're doing.
What we're saying.
Exactly. 1,000%. Because that's one thing my mom did do, was scream a lot. And I just, you know, I know that that's not effective. You know, like, I just, like, am clear on the fact that, like, me screaming at this baby is not going to change anything. It's not going to make anything better. But so I'll be stern with my students and my son. And with my student, I just feel like I'm a very tough love type of vibe. Like, that's, like, the type of parenting and teaching I give. It's very tough love, where it's like, sorry, I said you couldn't do this. And with the teaching I do, I teach in like Camden, right? So like everyone who's watching this, wherever you're from, you know what Camden is, right? And Camden, New Jersey is. I teach in Camden. So sometimes in teaching, it's like they want you to be a warm demander, or you can be a sentimentalist, right?
Okay.
And you think about the fact that these students may be from and this is generalizing, because some of them are not impoverished, and they don't come from a poor background or whatever that case may be, but some of them are, right? And then you feel bad because you're, like, being so, like, you're taking away them dressing up for Halloween at school, right? And you feel bad because you're like, this may be the only thing they have to look forward to this month. You know what I'm saying? But then at the same time, it's like, yeah, but they have to understand that to get, like, what you want in life, you have to do what you need to do. You know what I mean? So it's, like, such a hard thing with them, more than even my son, because my son has and gets everything he wants and needs, right? So taking away something from him doesn't make me feel as sad, but taking away something from my scholars makes me feel sad, because I'm like,
they feel like you don't know what their home life is like.
Yeah. I'm like, if I could, this baby, you know, but I am a tough lover. Like, I am, and I let them know I love you to death, but you can't, like, you didn't earn it. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't earn it. So it's like, I cannot give you something that you did not earn.
So my response to that is, and this is the thing, like, you teach second grade, right?
Yeah, second grade.
So what age is that? Like 7, 8 years old. So they have a little bit of an understanding of, like, delayed consequences and delayed rewards.
Okay.
Whereas, like, younger kids, like, I've have even friends and, you know, people that have kids in, like, daycare age.
Yeah.
And then their kid is, like, 3-4 years old, and they'll be like, yeah, so and so was on punishment all weekend because they did something in school on Wednesday. And I'm like, bro, that child cannot think ahead.
Yeah.
To know, like, in that moment, if I do something right now, I'm going to have to pay for it later on this week or later on today. They don't have that level of understanding.
Yeah.
6, 7 years old, they're starting to get there.
Yeah.
But you're going to get the most from your child, from your kids at work.
Yeah.
Based with a reinforcement system in place.
Okay.
So I think that our natural way to be is to enforce consequences when really we should be constantly rewarding. Like we should be really pointing out every single positive things these kids are doing, because in reality you want to reinforce what you want to see. Like you have to be like almost obnoxious about it. Oh my God, I love how you're sitting in that chair so nicely. Oh my God, thank you so much for walking in so quietly. You have to be so obnoxious about it and really point out what you want to see more of it. I think that sometimes we get so focused on like what we don't want to see. And we are always talking about what we don't want to see. And a lot of times kids are almost reinforced by that attention. Like people understand attention is attention, whether it's bad or good. Like
especially if you're coming from a place where you're not receiving a lot of attention.
Exactly. And a lot of these kids go home and are ignored by their parents.
Exactly.
You know, there's nothing going on for them. They don't have any type of real engagement. So they're coming to school and they're fighting for their teacher's attention. You know, because they know if they do something bad or unacceptable, their teacher's going to yell at them. But that feels the same void as saying like, "Hey, good job." It lands the same way in their body. So
that's profound.
So it's just like you have to understand that like you really have to focus on what you want to see. Versus like what you don't want to see, because that's where you're going to start to see those behaviors increase. And things like that, as opposed to focusing on what you don't want to see. Because kids, like even I always say, like if a kid is running down the hallway, you'll hear a lot of people say, "Don't run." All they hear is run. So instead, you have to tell them walk. Like you want to give them what to do as opposed to not want to do. Like there always has to be a replacement behavior to all of it. Like, okay, if you don't want me to call, like some teachers will say, "Stop calling out." Oh, raise your hand with a quiet voice. Like you have to give them what else to do as opposed to like what you don't want them to see. Because kids will focus on just whatever you said. They only hear really what you said. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like when you're looking for behavior change from your students, focus on flipping that to like what you want to see versus what you don't want to see.
I love that. That's good, because I feel like I do that. Like if I do see one of my scholars who usually has a hard time, not having a hard time in a certain situation, I definitely give them all the praise in the world. I'm like, whoa, I'm impressed by so-and-so. Look how they are sitting. Like, you know, like I like big them up, you know. But of course, and teachers, we know this. Everyone knows this, obviously, that teachers get worn down eventually.
It's not enough of you guys, and the kids that you have and the money that you make. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Like, honestly, America's doing their teachers dirty. And
I can never do it.
It is not good for people sending their kids to school. Like, it's not good for anyone. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good for the fact that we're raising these youth based off of salaries that are not six-figure salaries. And that are just the hours that are just unheard of and ridiculous, where we can't raise our own kids. So clearly we're burnt out and tired. So even if we have all the love in the world, because I do think that teaching is a calling and you don't do it unless you're called to it. Like you can't. Like I could never unless I was called to it. You know what I mean? But I'm called to it. I love it. Actually, there's nothing I don't like about my actual job, you know, which is teaching my students. You know what I mean? Like I love every part of that. Outside of that, you know, like,
I mean, that's good, because a lot of people can't say that. I mean, I work with some teachers who literally I'm like, do you even like children?
Why
are you here? Like, what happened? So,
no.
There's a lot of people like that. So I commend you for that, because it's definitely not an easy job. And, it's a service job. And you have to really come in and kind of put yourself aside. All of it. So I get it. Trust me.
You have to put yourself aside, and then you also, like, if you have children, you have to put your child, like, you have to put
that
your
too.
life
your
aside.
Own aside. And your family.
You put everything aside to.
Like, how often do you hesitate to call out if your son is sick? Because you have to worry about what's going to happen in your classroom.
Because it's like one child versus 22. So it's like, are these 22 children not going to learn today?
Exactly.
Or is my baby just going to have to tough it out? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So it's a lot.
It's totally a lot. But that's another reason why I thought this conversation was so important, because not only am I a mother trying to figure out how to discipline my child, but I'm also a teacher, you know, trying to figure out how to not discipline, because they're like, I mean, yes, discipline. I am raising them more or less. They're with me.
They're with you more time than with their parents.
I'm co-parenting with a lot of these parents.
Exactly.
And they know it. Like,
Oh,
they
God.
tell me all the time, like, do what you see fit, Miss Fowler. You know what I mean? Like, do what you see fit, because they know. And you do, like, if you're called to it and you're there for the right reasons, you love them babies like they're your kids.
You do.
You know what I mean? So I love my babies like they're my kids.
I mean, I've shed tears over some of the kids that I've worked with, so I get it. Like,
I have cried, and I don't
Yeah.
even cry, and I cry
Yeah.
over my babies. Like, I've looked at some of them and thought, could I take them in my own home?
yes.
You know, like, I've looked
Yeah.
at some children and thought, like, maybe I can adopt this baby. You know what I mean? Like, based off their circumstances. Like, I love them to love them down. You know what I mean? So, like, I do want to know how I can help them better, you know, and how I could. And that's the thing about being a teacher, is like, you're impacting this person's life for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
you know, and I want to know how I can be the most impactful, because I think that I know I'll be a prominent person in their life. You know
Right.
what I mean? And what, based off of their circumstances, what have you. So the discipline conversation is so important based off of that, right? I do want to talk a little bit about, I feel like you touched on this a lot, but like discipline, like with a mom and a son versus like a dad and a daughter, and like, what are the differences or no difference, or like, what should that look like? Like, how should that work? And let me just preface it by saying this, like, okay, I have a son, like, so do you, as do you, right? And we're mothers, right? And we're not, like, we have, our sons have fathers, right? But we are, like, I guess you will call it a single mother, or we're co-parenting, whatever the case may be, right? So we have to parent our child on our own terms, right? So do you think that there are differences? Should there be differences? Are there differences? Like, what does that look like for you?
I think that there are differences. I think it'd be silly to say that there aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as my son goes into like those preteen, teenage years, I feel like he's really about to give me a run for my money, because I feel like he's gonna know. Like, the same thing with my brother.
Yeah.
You know, he's bigger than me, he's stronger than me, and I don't beat my child. Like, when he was younger, he did get spanked here and there, but like, I don't beat him.
And what do you mean by spank? Did you like pop his butt?
Yeah, like popped, like pow pow, that type of thing.
Yep, same.
Never with like a belt or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I can't even remember the last time he got popped or anything like that. Like, my son is really well behaved.
Yeah.
In general, so I don't really necessarily see the need to do any of that.
Yeah.
A lot of we have a lot of conversations about stuff and just consistency and, like, you know, certain consequences if things happened and things like that. But I feel like as he gets older, I will probably have to lean on, like, my brother, my dad, you know, his dad, for certain conversations, because I'm just not going to know what he's going through.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not going to know what it's like to be a teenage boy.
Yeah.
And I think that the times have changed so much too, with like the access that these kids have and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's just certain experiences that I won't have, and I cannot give real insight.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be a hormonal teenage boy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, God.
You know, I don't know. I don't know. So it's just like, I feel like I'm going to have to start to lean on other people to kind of like shed light on those experiences for me, whether it be like me having a conversation with my brother or my dad, and then like going back and talking to my son, or having them talk to him directly.
Yeah.
Because I think there are so many things that are part of like the natural development, like where, you know, kids are going to do things, they're going to start to look stuff up, they're going to get curious, and like all of that stuff is very normal to their development.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I said before. Like, I think we get so stuck on like telling kids what not to do. Or don't look that up. Don't research things. But like, they're curious.
Yeah, yeah.
So how can we, you know, find a way to get them access to this information in the safest way possible?
Mm-hmm.
And things like that, and things that are age appropriate for them. So it's just like, I would definitely have to. There's a big difference, because we just don't have the experience, and I would have to kind of be open about that part. Like, as a single mom, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I feel that way, and it makes me sad, because like, I remember having a kid. I'm like, I do not want a boy. Like, I didn't want a boy, and it wasn't like a selfish thing. It was because, I mean, maybe it was selfish, but it wasn't because I just didn't want a boy. But it was because when I raising a black man in America just felt scary to me.
Hell.
You know what I mean?
Woo!
Like, it felt so scary to me, and it still feels scary to me, you know, but I'm like actually trying to like blink it out. Like, you know, I don't want to think about it too much, but also because I knew that if I did have to do it alone, there would be aspects of it that I could not do alone.
Right.
You know, so I would have to depend on someone else to help me. You know, where as if it was a little girl, I would understand because I've been there.
Yeah, you've been there.
You know what I mean? And like now that I have a boy, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And he has a very active father who is great. But it's like we also are, of course, we're not going to have like, we don't have the same vision for
right.
exactly how we want him to like behave or what we want him to understand. So I can't tell him how to raise a son. You know what I mean?
That's where it gets tricky, because I think that you confuse children when you don't have the same
vision,
like, expectations or vision for your kids. So they don't really know. Like, you know, they're like, my mom has this expectation. Like, that was a big issue for me growing up. My mom's expectations were very different than my dad's expectations.
Yeah.
My mom was a lot more laid back about certain stuff, where my dad was, like, very strict about everything.
Yeah. Same.
So it was just like I really was kind of confused on how I should be.
What should you do? Which one should you go with?
I don't know who I'm supposed to be.
Oh, that's good.
So I think that that's definitely probably something that my own son will probably struggle with as he gets older. Like, you know, this is what happens at mom's house versus this is what happens when I'm at dad's house.
Yeah.
I run a very tight ship.
Yeah.
You know, in my house. Not to the point where, like, you know, my son has more. He has a PS5. He has he has an Xbox. He has all the things.
Yeah.
He really could not want for anything.
Yeah.
But, like, did you take out the trash? Did you clean your room? Like, I run did you get up? Did you wash your face? Did you brush your teeth? Like, I run a tight ship, whereas, like, it's probably a little more relaxed in other settings.
Yeah.
So I just think that, like, where I'm trying to build, like, certain expectations, you know, and they go over the other parent's house and it's just more laxy, and he comes back home and he's like, well, I didn't have to do X, Y, and Z in the last 3 days. Like,
yeah.
I'd rather be over there. And I'm like, are you sure?
Oh,
are you sure?
I'm so happy you brought this up, because that's one of my biggest issues right now, is because it's a new thing also for my son to be like have his parents not together, right?
Yeah. And that's an adjustment for him too, like
a huge adjustment for him, like, because he was such a he's such a 2-parent kid where he like wants to hold both of our hands while we're walking down the street, and like wants to like he's just mom and dad this, mom and dad that. Like, he loves us together because we've been together all his life, as he knows, you know what I mean? So like it is a hard adjustment for him, and we both are trying to take, like, the good thing about it is that we're the best of friends, like his dad and I, and like we are family regardless, you know, and we have that understanding. But at the end of the day, like, we're going our separate routes, so he could do what he wants to do with his son and vice versa. I just can hope that we can see eye to eye on those things. You know what I mean? Like,
I would just encourage for you guys to say in conversation as much as possible about just like the future in terms of like what you're teaching him, because if it's so different, it's only going to confuse him more. And
it does stress me out to think about me being the parent. Because like I said, growing up, I hated my dad because he was the strict parent. In retrospect, I would much rather be a parent like my dad than like my mom. Like, just because I feel like when I think about all the things that my dad instilled in me, I just don't feel like I got them from my mom. Like, and it was just like he just took parenting very seriously, you know, and just did it in the best way he knew how to. And I can't wait till my son gets grown to love me. You know what I mean? Like, not that he'll love me, but like he'll love his dad more, because like his dad is more lax, you know, and I'm so super stern and like have all these expectations.
He's gonna appreciate it though. Like, they always get to a point where like they appreciate. Like, my dad was more strict. Like, he didn't put his hands on me, but he was more strict when it came down to like my grades and things like that.
Yeah.
And those are things that I can look back on and say like I definitely appreciate. Because, you know, I was a straight A student.
Yeah.
You know, I went to college. I got a degree. I got my master's degree. Like, he kind of put that in me to get those things done and to be a hard worker.
Yeah.
And things like that. Whereas my mom was like a lot more lax. She was just not putting up with the disrespect.
Yeah.
And things like that. Like, she didn't play about her house and the disrespect and things not getting done. But I do definitely appreciate always like the level of I would say like consistency and just stability that my dad had in his household.
Yeah.
Because my mom just didn't have that.
Yeah.
As mothers of young boys, are you concerned about society today, especially with statistics, with the fact that women are 15% more likely to get a 4-year degree than boys today? And also the young male suicide rate is 4 times that of young girls today, and there's a lot of other statistics that show that boys are kind of falling behind today. What are your thoughts or concerns about these issues?
Um, for me, definitely the mental health aspect of it, because I think that these kids are just so impressionable, and the access that they have to like social media and things like that, TikTok, Instagram, the influence that's out there, it's very scary. My son is 12 and he's in therapy.
Oh,
because
wow.
like I just feel like
I love that,
it's
though.
needed. You know, I just feel like I just think about, you know, the stuff that I didn't have and the mental health issues that I dealt with when I was younger, and I didn't really have an outlet. And I tell him all the time, like, if like I'm the issue, tell your therapist. Like, I want to figure this out for you, so you have an outlet. So it's very terrifying.
Yes.
With those like suicidal statistics.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, school for me, like everybody's not going to go to college.
Yeah.
I tell my son all the time, like, I don't necessarily think that you have to go to college. You do have to have a plan for your life. But in reality, like, you're not going to necessarily have that at 18. Like, I'm 33 and I just really figured out what I wanted to do within the last few years.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot to put on a kid to say, like, hey, you have to go to college. You have to do this right after high school.
Yeah.
But I do want to encourage my son at his age now to try as many different things as he can, so he can find what he likes.
Yeah.
And you know, what he might want to do when he gets older.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely do. As a single mom, those statistics are very scary.
Daunting.
More significantly, the mental health.
Oh, for sure.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm just trying to prepare for all of those things now, like just getting him used to talking and being emotionally intelligent and things like that, and being able to feel like he can feel how he feels and voice that and get support for it.
Ooh, that's super heavy for me, because yes, absolutely, like that is what I'm so worried about, right? Like that's what I've always been worried about. Even before I had my child, I was worried about those things, and just understanding that, like, those things about Black men, you know? And like, I think that his dad has lived that experience, and he's like, I'm fine. Like, he's lived the experience of a Black man not being able to express his emotions or his feelings. You know what I mean? And like, he is that, you know? So I'm like, we can't teach our son to be that.
Right.
Because I see the issues popping up in you because of that. And you don't want your son to go through those same issues. And if you don't work on yourself, then, you know, there's a good possibility your son will think it's okay not to work on himself when it comes to those issues, you know? And so that is why I go to therapy, and like, I try to understand it. Because even me, myself, I was raised very like, don't express my emotions. Like,
Same.
You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't.
My mom would tell me you need to pray and get some holy water.
I wasn't, you know, like, I'm not raised to be a pretty princess who can cry on my dad's shoulder. Like, it's like, girl, suck it up. It's life. Move on.
Exactly.
You know, like, I was raised like that. I'm very, like, rough around the edges in
and
that way.
And I get it, because I feel like our temperaments are similar in that way.
Yeah.
Where we're just kind of like, not cutthroat, but like, we're like, all right, you know,
it is
life.
what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and we have to move on.
And we move on.
Yeah, like, we don't really spend a lot of time feeling our feels.
No.
Like, we're not those type of people at all. Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard for me to even identify what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Are you concerned? So kind of part of my hypothesis about this stuff is that the prescriptions giving to boys are through a female lens, as far as tapping into your emotions and always talking about how you feel and expressing yourself. And I don't know if that's exactly healthy. I think you should know how you feel, but the execution of your emotions and being so consumed with them for young boys, I think, is different than for women and how they express themselves. And I would say that you're saying that, you know, the older generation of men were less communicative or like less expressive about their feelings, but the suicide rate was lower at that point, and times were probably a bit harder. And so how can we justify there's more mental health and more prescriptions for this stuff and more addressing your emotions all the time, and it seems like the situation for young boys is actually getting worse and not better?
I think, and I'll let you talk about this, Tiff, because I'm sure you know more than me, but like, me personally, like, I feel like back then, right, when like the suicide rates were not as high for Black men, this, that, and the other, I think the awareness to know that what was going on with them emotionally wasn't a thing, right?
Mm-mm.
Like mental health awareness was not a thing back then, right?
Yeah, but suicide statistics are, so you would capture that.
Like suicide
data.
statistics were a thing back then.
Yeah, you can look back into the 70s and stuff.
I don't know about like how accurate that would be. That interesting to me. I'd have to do more research on it. I think being aware that you have emotions and feelings and like you need to be aware of them and understanding them is very daunting in itself, opposed to like just having them suppressed and not thinking about them at all and just knowing, like, having a clear path on what like you're supposed to be as a man is harder than like not actually understanding what you're supposed to be as a man, which is I think is a space that a lot of black men are in right now, where it's just like, okay, so I can express my emotions, but can I really? But like, what should it look like, and how is it supposed to be expressed? Like what you're talking about, Ryan. Like, I think that that is actually like more daunting and more complicated to deal with than just like being like, okay, well, I have emotions, I can't talk about them, I'm going to kill myself every once in a while, right? Compared to, it's confusing. I'm very confused. It's fucking me up. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know. I feel like it's more complicated to be working through it than to not be working through it.
Yeah. I don't know if the and I could be wrong, but I think that suicide rates have gone up for everybody in general. Not just black men. And I don't know if it's reflective of specifically like mental health awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if that's why exactly it's gone up. I think it's more of a societal issue in general, and what is expected of us, and the things that have changed in society, that has a lot more to do with like how we're impacted, like in terms of like social media. Like I say exposure, what kids are exposed to and things like that. Like I think it has more to do with what's going on in a societal perspective rather than like mental health awareness.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like I think it's important for anybody to understand their emotions. Like people have feelings, have emotions, and all those other things. And it's not like you should be able to sit with that, right? And it's necessarily what you do about it. Like, and I think that it's hard for people to, like, I used to say all the time, for the longest time, I tell people this, like, I used to always say, I'm bored. And then, like, I would do things like call people or reach out to people that I don't necessarily want to talk to. In reality, I wasn't bored, I was lonely. Because boredom, I can go do something. I can go color, I can go watch a movie, and that would make me not bored. Like, if I'm seeking other people, then I'm lonely. Like if I'm seeking companionship or conversation, like that means that that's a feeling of loneliness. So it is important to be able to call an emotion what it is, number one. And then two, understanding that like you don't always necessarily have to do anything about it, but feel it.
Yeah.
Like there's not always something to be done with an emotion other than like to feel how that feels. So just kind of go back what Ryan said. Like I don't think that, I don't know if that suicidal rate is necessarily dependent of mental health. I think it's more of a just overall the expectations of what life is now. It's a lot different to what we are exposed to versus what people were exposed to back then. Like people are constantly seeing on social media what other people are accomplishing. Like back then, people were kind of like in their own life, in their own cahoots, and not really worried about what was going on. They didn't have access to all of that. Now there's just so much influence. And so much people are exposed to that really kind of interferes with how you're feeling about yourself.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know. This conversation is everywhere.
No, it is. No, that was.
Yeah.
But no, I think so. Ryan, I want to ask you, as a black man, like, how do you think, and just as a man in general, how do you think that men should be able to express their emotions, or like, what do you think that should look like?
I think this is the wrong focus, and that's the problem, is that I think men care about actually solving the problem, right? So you're sad. Why are you sad? Or what is causing it? And I think you want to come to a solution. Oh, well, I don't have enough money to take a girl out on a date. that's a frustration, right? Especially in this where there's all this date inflation and all that kind of stuff, right? I think that's actually a real problem for a young boy where there's money culture and you're just starting out in life and you can't even go out on a date because there's some rich guy that's taking all the women or whatever, right? So they're mad about it.
Right, that's more of a societal issue, like the inflation, right?
Right. So that's a societal issue, but I think partially I think the issue is resiliency of all people, because this thing about being offended and like everyone's supposed to make you feel comfortable versus you being resilient.
Your problems are your own,
right? And it's that I think that's a big issue that's across genders. But back to my thing, I think that men and boys want a solution to their problem rather than coping with how you feel per se, which coping with how you feel is important, but I think it's more action based rather than working through your emotions and doing that stuff. So like when men and boys are in sports or given a mission in which you can achieve things, they are much less likely to that's why boys and stuff join gangs, right? Because there's like a hierarchy and you can be successful in the gang and blah, blah, blah. But if you're on a sports team, that's the same thing. Be disciplined, practice, be part of a team, and then like you're rewarded based off of like your performance. And I think throughout history, that's what men and boys have done, is be parts of things and succeed through those things. And those are being taken away or like less prioritized. So they're left without objective meaning or purpose, and therefore there is no solution because they're like falling out of society in general.
Right. And and that goes back to the question that you asked earlier, like is there a difference to how like a mom would deal with their son versus like how a dad would deal with his daughter? And that's why I said like there are certain things where I'm gonna have to bring in a male's perspective because I just don't know. And that reminded me of a good point, like where I'm, maybe focused on like, hey, like this is how you feel and it's okay. Where my son's like, I just want to fix it. How do we fix it so I can move on and not feel this anymore?
Oh,
yeah, and like that's a perfect example where I would have to bring in someone else's perspective because I just don't get it. I can't see it that way.
Right.
So it's important to have those, like if the father isn't available, to have those other people to be able to kind of provide that perspective for you, whether it be directly to your kid or through you to your kid, and things like that.
Yeah, because if my mom tells me, like if I tell my mom a problem I'm having and she goes, "Oh, honey, that's horrible," empathy I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but like, how can we do something about this?
And I don't think me and Dom are not those moms though.
No,
we're not like, oh honey, like we're very like, okay, well, what did you like? How can we be accountable here?
Yes,
like what are we gonna do in the future?
Out.
Yeah, like how are we gonna move forward?
Right.
Yeah,
neither. I can't say that either one of us are really like we're not big coddlers.
No.
I've definitely I've learned recently like how much I have to soften my approach because I was maybe a little bit too
Oh God,
strong. But
yes, I agree.
Yeah, but so I'm still learning, but yeah, I don't think either one of us are those that are gonna be like, oh honey, like
no. It's actually a hard thing for me because I'm like, what you would expect from most women, I'm like, I wasn't treated like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't go to my dad with a problem and he's like, oh, baby girl, let me take care of it for you. Like that.
Yeah.
That wasn't.
I kind of was. It depends, I guess, on the scenario. Like.
Yeah. It wasn't my reality. I just never been coddled by
anybody.
Right. So facts. I'm like, when my son comes to me and he has a way different like experience than I had, just in general. Like, but I'm just like, no. Like that's just not how that works. You know what I mean? Yeah. But his dad, I don't think feels like that. And I get it because he is our only child. He is our pride and joy. And like, I get it. I get it, but I know what the outcome could be, and I do not want to set my son up for anything other than success. And so I'm like, we have to like do that work now, and I don't think his dad is like forward thinking that much into it as I am.
As long as you're teaching your kid based on his developmental age, like that's what's most important. Like I think that people have to understand, like, you have to go by a child's discretion. Like, I always hear people say, like, oh, like, I always tell my son, these kids are, like, in preschool. I tell my kid, like, oh, if somebody hits them, hit them back. And I'm just like, please understand like how that manifests
in
your child as they get older. Like, you know, you can give a kid a little bit more the older they get. Like, you know, I'll tell my son, like, hey, like, if you're in a situation in school and, you know, someone puts their hands on you and it doesn't hurt, it's not significant. It's not, you're not in danger. Walk away. Just walk away. Like, if it's a situation that you can get yourself away from, just walk away.
I agree.
Now, if someone is picking on you or causing you harm, by all means, you fight. But people just have a general statement of, like, if someone hits you, to hit them back. And I'm like, that's too general. You have to go into, like, you have to teach kids how to build discretion and navigate each situation as an individual situation, because all of it is not the same. Like, all of it is not the same. There are situations where we can walk away from because it's going to cause us more of a headache if we don't. Versus, like, you need to defend yourself.
Like, choose your battles.
Exactly. Like, that's taught at a young age, you know?
Yes. Like, I've learned so much in this conversation. It's crazy because it's like, since I was like, way before I was a teacher or a mother, I always, like, other people having a bunch of kids has given me anxiety. Like,
all the time.
Right.
I'm like, why do you have so many kids?
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with me. Like, I know I only got one, and, like, all the things with, like, other people having kids gives me anxiety. And now I know at this big age of 32, I know why. Because it's just, like, think about how I'm learning these things, right? As an educated woman, a woman who educates children, I'm learning these things from Tiffany today. Y'all don't know all this. Like, you know what I mean?
Like, how do you know what you're doing?
You don't know what you're doing, and you're just having these kids, and you're not even educating yourself on how to raise them.
Yeah.
And you're just going off based off what you know, which wasn't healthy, and you know it wasn't healthy. And not all cases. Some people had it healthy. You know what I mean? I'm generalizing right now, of course. But it's just like, we got to take it more seriously.
Yeah.
You cannot just be popping out kids, because it's just like so much you think about in popping out those kids. You know what I mean?
You have to be a really intentional parent. Like, that's really what it comes down to. I think that some people, you know, babies are cute and they look cute in their outfits, but, like, you have to, in 2023, you have to be so intentional about how you parent your children. Because, like building those like, entitlement is at an all-time high right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I tell people, like, you have to teach your kids young. Like, my son used to always, he used to get so upset when he was younger, like, when I didn't let him, like, be on me.
Yeah.
And, like, that sounds harsh as a mom. Like, why don't you cuddle your baby? But I'm like, no, he needs to learn at 4 or 5 years old that just because he wants access to me doesn't mean that I have to give him access to me. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you have to teach that at a young age.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's people out here that really think that because they want it, they should have it. And it doesn't work like that. And it starts with the relationship between your kid and the parent.
Yeah.
Like, I tell my son all the time, like, yes, it doesn't, just because I want space does not mean that I don't love you. It just means that this is what I need right now. That's what I need for myself. And understand that if that's what you need for yourself, then someone else should respect it. Like, you have to build those boundaries young and early, because it really does matter. It does matter. So many people grow up and they think that they just deserve the world just because. Just because. And it's just like, why?
That's the biggest lesson I'm teaching my son right now, is, like, you don't get what you want all the time.
Yeah, like, teaching kids early to accept no. Teaching kids early to wait. Like, you'd be surprised how many parents out here don't even think that their kids have to share, which is beyond me. They'll be like, oh, well, that's his toy. He don't have to share.
What?
They're going to go to a classroom with 20-something other kids, and they're going to be like, mine. And you're going to be getting calls from the teacher, and you're going to be confused.
And let me just tell you, because this has been my biggest thing about that, right? As a teacher, right? Students who are not behaving well, right, and are constantly having to be disciplined by the school are not learning. That's what that results in, right?
Exactly.
Like, if your scholar is constantly
impeding their learning.
Exactly. It's impeding their learning. They're not in the classroom because now they're at the principal's office or the dean's office or what have you.
And other kids learning.
Exactly.
Because you're constantly having to stop the classroom.
If any of my students sat here on this chair today, they will tell you Miss Fowler's favorite thing to say is, you will not slow down the learning in my classroom.
Exactly.
You will not. You will have to be dismissed from this classroom. Your parent will have to pick you up, or you'll be in the principal's office, and now you're not learning. And that's not what I want. You know what I'm saying? But what you won't do is slow down 22 other children's learning because you want to act the way that you're acting. And, like, I say this to my own son's father all the time. If he is not behaving in school, he will not be learning. So now he's falling behind.
Exactly.
Do you want your child child to fall behind, because that is really what it's all about. Like, how your child behaves is whatever, you know, like that actually doesn't impact me outside of the school day, right? But I'm their teacher, so it's my job to teach them things. And I can't teach them if they're in the principal's office.
Right.
So it's just like, kids who are not behaving are not learning. It's that simple. Like, and do you want your kid to learn or not? And like, I explain this to people all the time, and it's just like, I don't know. You just have to get clear on that, and you just have to make that clear to your child. I'm like, your student, but yeah, your student, because your child is your student.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
I mean, my son had his issues like 4th, 5th grade. Like, I'm not 4th, 5th grade. I'm sorry, 4 or 5 years old in kindergarten, and there were kids in his classrooms that were like having certain behaviors, and he thought like, oh well, I'm gonna mimic them. No,
we're not doing that.
Yeah,
no,
yeah, like his consequences are not yours. You know, I'll come up to the school every day if I have to. I have no problem. You know. So things like that. Like, he learned very fast. Like, I'm on board with your teachers. Like, we're on a team. Like, you know, to make sure that you get what you need. So whether that looks like, you know, me having to keep coming up here every single day to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do. And it's not fun when mommy comes to school.
Nope. It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
And I don't want to embarrass you.
Yeah. So it's just like kind of nipping those things in the bud. But you have a lot of parents that make excuses for their kids, or they say their favorite line is, well, they don't do this at home. Of course they don't, because they don't have to sit at a desk for 7 hours.
Right.
They don't have any demands on them at home. They get to go and they get to play and be free and watch TV and be on their iPads and things like that. And on TikTok, you're not making them do anything. The expectations are very different at home versus school.
Ooh, and as a teacher, it's hard because not everyone values their children's education.
They don't.
Which is a harsh reality.
They don't value their own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not everyone values education.
Yeah.
Let me just say it like that. Like, not everyone values education. Like, it's not what's most important to them. And I had to learn that when I offered an incentive in my class that was not an educational incentive. It was like, well, it was actually, because it was, if you do your homework, you get ice cream. Right. And the parents cared about the kids getting the ice cream, but they didn't care before about the kids doing the homework. I'm like, what's up? Like, you don't care that your kid does their homework? Like, I'm confused. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm a teacher. Of course, I hold education in high regard.
Right.
Not everyone
and the reality is that everybody is not going to be intrinsically motivated. Like, they're just not.
No.
They are not going to want to do well just for the sake of doing well.
Yeah.
Like, for me, getting A's was very important to me. I wanted to be a straight A student. Like, I wanted to do well. Like, I was a teacher's pet. Like, I just always wanted to do well. Like, it mattered to me without any other extra motivation. My son is the opposite. Yeah. He will literally tell you, I could care less. Yeah. Guess what? I had to find a way to motivate him. Yeah, He's not motivated. I knew that was something that my child needed, so I had to put extra systems in place.
Yep. Hey,
if you do X, Y, and Z, this is a reward. Yep. So until that behavior becomes a regular behavior for him, I have to keep reinforcing it. Like, you have to keep finding ways to reinforce it. Same thing in the classroom. Like, you know, kids aren't going to be motivated just by you saying good job. You know, some kids need extra reinforcement. So, like, once you kind of put those things in place and the behaviors are then becoming regular, you can kind of fade back that extra reinforcement. But some kids do need that extra push because it's just not intrinsic for them.
Yep. And I totally get that. And I realize that about myself too, because like, my son's dad always would tell me, like, I was not a great student. Like, I didn't care about school like that, you know. And he did graduate. He has a college degree and all those things. But, like, he had a good support system that pushed him through that. And I didn't have a support system that pushed me through it. I just had my dad wanting my dad's love and affection, and my dad wanted his kids to graduate college, and I knew that. So for me, it was enough that my dad wanted me to get straight A's, so I got straight A's, you know, and that was my motivation. And I think about it every day, like, what's going to be August's motivation, you know what I mean? Because, like, whatever is going to, because to me, education is so important, and that comes from it being important to my dad and me wanting my dad to love me, but now it's in me, you know? So it's like, how do I put it in August? Because he's not going to get it from his dad, clearly, you know what I mean? Like, his dad doesn't.
Yeah, and the school system is hard. School system is hard because kids, like, there's different types of intelligences, right? And there's only certain ones that kind of shine through in the school district. Yeah. Which is hard for kids because a lot of people are more artistic. Yeah. They have more spatial intelligence and things like that, or they have, like, more body intelligence, and those aren't able to shine through in school. So there's only a certain kind of kid that's really going to be heavily rewarded or heavily reinforced naturally in that environment. And I think that's something too that we have to understand, that, like, everyone is not, they're just not going to be the star student.
Yeah.
Like some kids are going to be C kids, and that's okay.
Yep.
And the issue is that we praise good grades so much that like those C students feel less of themselves, where it's just like, it's okay. It's not really, this just doesn't mean that you can't be good at other things.
Yeah.
I think that if kids are working hard, and they are constantly making like, good decisions and good choices on their own behalf, and things like that, if they're respectful to their peers, if they're building good social relationships, like those are the things that we need to learn to point out in that setting, because a lot of kids just won't ever be those straight A students. And that doesn't mean that they're any less or they're going to be less successful. It just means that that is not where they can shine. Because the school system doesn't design that. Really it's just for kids that are, really good reading performers, really good math performers, and things like
test
that.
Takers.
Yeah, test takers and stuff like that. But the school district doesn't give room for other kids to be successful. And I think that that's hard.
Yeah,
for a lot of them.
That's another point in being intentional about your parenting.
Yes.
Because there could be other school options like for your child. Yeah. And that is how intentional you have to be about parenting. And this is why popping out a bunch of kids, it's just too hard for any of us to do.
Because all these kids are going to go in different directions. And you got to be able to keep up.
You got to study each and every one of those kids and figure out what's best for them.
Heck no,
And you're not doing that.
Yeah, the one is hard.
One is hard. Like, guys, slow down on the kids.
Some people just have it. Like, I have friends that have multiple children, and I'm like, every single day, how do you do it?
And
they're all going to different practices and different things. And I'm like, God bless them, because I could never.
I know some women who carry it effortlessly and beautifully. Do not get me wrong. Like, sometimes.
And then some of them do it by themselves.
And yes.
I'm like,
trust me. I see that happen, and they do it great. I'm not saying it's not for everyone. Some people are meant to have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
But some people aren't. Like, you have to know, like, you have to take it seriously. If you're just having kids to have kids, that's one thing. If you're having kids because you're intentional about this is like what you want to do, and like you're ready to put all the effort into that kid and each and every one of those kids, that's different.
I like this.
But just stop popping out kids just to pop them out for any reason outside of just like actually wanting to be intentional about raising them. But
same thing as the active service. Like when you have that baby, just know that you're giving up a lot, which is okay.
It is.
Like, some people, that's how they want to use their energy in life, and that's fine. They want to be a giver.
Yes.
But I don't think people realize it until it's there.
Yeah, be prepared for it. Yeah, be prepared to.
And there's really no real way to prepare.
Oh, there's not,
like, mentally.
You just have to know that you're about to sacrifice everything.
Yeah, and you really don't really get it until you're there. That's the sad part about it.
No. You'll never understand it until you're in it. Yeah. But do know that, like, you'll be that's someone that you're going to be willing to die for at the drop of a hat.
There's so much purpose in it.
Yeah.
And so much fulfillment. Like, I don't want people to think that we're like, oh God, this is
no.
It's definitely
I wouldn't take it back ever.
No.
I wouldn't take it back ever.
It's the best feeling in the world to watch your kid grow up and be successful at things and see them happy and things like that. So just know that, like, it's not,
easy.
Not easy.
Not a cakewalk at all.
Yeah.
That's why we had this conversation here today. But I think this was a beautiful conversation. I definitely took some gems from this conversation. Like, I'm going to have to rewatch it and, like, timestamp it for the clips, because, like, there were some things I definitely learned in this conversation. So I appreciate you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Because literally this was a conversation that needed to be had. And, like, I said this when I first started this podcast, I want to have this conversation, but, like, this is the best time to have it, now that, like, me being a single mother and, like, trying to figure it all out, and going, like, being knee deep in my second year of being a teacher and leading my own class. You know what I mean? Like, I'm learning a lot about it. So thank you so much for that. I do have one more question, which is the last question I ask on every single episode, is what do you want to say for the record?
For the record, in terms of our conversation?
Or whatever.
I think I just want to reiterate the fact that a lot of things in life have their own consequence.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah. And stop holding kids to higher standards to you than you hold yourself.
Oh.
Like, I think that sometimes we punish children in ways that we wouldn't even
punish
ourselves. If we did ourselves, like, it wouldn't even make sense.
Yeah.
For us to punish ourselves that way. So just be more clear and intentional about how you're moving forward with your parenting, and just sometimes just take it, like, it's okay to, like, not know.
Yeah.
The best thing I've done in my parenting is just like paused. Like when something happened with my son, like sometimes I would just like take a break, take a few minutes to kind of think about it.
I like this.
I wanted to move forward. Like you don't always have to react in the moment. And then just give yourself time to just kind of make realistic decisions based off of like, you know, the situation.
Take heed to that. 2 weeks ago, we had Vern and Marcel on about their maintaining a long-term romantic relationship. Yeah. They've been married for 11 years, and that was the first piece of advice that they had given too, about like when you're in disagreements with your partner, to just take a pause. Yeah, like it's okay to take a pause and just like,
it can be so helpful in so many situations. Like you don't have to respond right away.
Yeah,
anything.
Reflect.
Yeah, like unless it's like a life or death situation in the moment, you literally can just say, I'm gonna get back to you.
Yeah, let me think about it for a second. Like we're humans. Like we do not like just have all the answers right off the top of our head in every situation. We have our own emotions going on and things, and it's always nice to step back so that you're not making an irrational emotional decision like Ryan talks about. Yeah. Yeah. So this was a great episode.
Yeah, it was good.
Thank you so much, Tiff, for coming on and talking about this with me. I appreciate you. Come back always.
Of course.
I love that this is your second pod here.
I know. Whenever you're trying to have me, I'm willing to be here.
Yes, I love that.
I'll talk about whatever.
Yes. No, Tiffany is very profound in everything that she talks about, so I love that.
I like this.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, this is episode 27 of For the Record podcast, and we are out. That was good. Will you tell me?